Hello, hello. Come on in.
So thinking on right thing.
Whoops. Well, see if I can get this rolling. Y'all are down here to Thursday. I've had a good, hey, I'm already on there down here. That's good. It's pretty good, that's a pretty quick turnaround. Sometimes it doesn't show up on my laptop for quite a while, or, a couple of minutes. Seemed like it went faster today. Give us a little bit of time. Get some folks on this morning. A few showing up. Morning, Mara. Morning, Sean Summers. I need that reminder to come on over to the other side. Morning, Christy. Morning, Valerie. There is a... There is definitely... how do I do that? Oh, yeah. I'm trying to operate a computer and let y'all get on here and try to get back going. All right, we got Brad, good morning. Like I said, hi to Valerie. Tiffany, good morning. Got a few on this morning. A little slower getting on today. We'll go over to John chapter 9 again. We'll talk some more about this, a little more about this chapter, this great chapter. It's interesting how he's got this whole chapter about this situation. It just broke up that way. A lot of times there's 2 or 3 things that Jesus did within a chapter in these Gospels, but this one covers the whole. I mean, it's all tied to this healing of this blind man. And so, morning, Robin. So let's get into the word here in John chapter 9. So let's go to John chapter 9 if you got a Bible. And I love verse 1. It just says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man that was blind from birth. So he just walking along. I mean, he just being Jesus, doing what Jesus did, going out and ministering. And there's something valuable about that for us as believers, because we are the hands and feet of Jesus in the earth. I mean, we are the ones that carry now the ministry of Jesus. And you may not see yourself as that, but you should. And if you're born again, if you've made Jesus Lord, you now have the Holy Spirit living in you. And you ought to ask God, fill me with everything you got. Give me a ministry to minister to others and help others. I mean, if the love of God and the compassion of God is in you, you ought to desire, it will come out. Now, you may have to put the flesh down in order to see it, but it's there, and you're going to have a different approach to people. You're going to have a different approach to situations. You're going to be willing and able and begin to recognize as you walk about your life, you're going to see there's opportunities to minister, to connect with people. And the more you're keen to that and pick up on that, and the more opportunities will come. You don't have to try to force things. God will just bring them to you. And you may not think you're a minister, or you may not think you're doing ministry, but when we've made Jesus Lord and we've surrendered our life to Jesus Christ, something changes, and we begin to see the world different. And that's what affects it affects everything about us, but that's what affects our works, or the things that we do out in the world. And that's how people know we're Christians. He said they'll know you're Christians by your love for one another, but also the lost, or the unchurched, or the people that are struggling. I know a lot of people that are Christians or go to church. That can be the same thing. Christians that go to church, or Christians, or people that go to church. I mean, there's 3 different categories there. But it should be that Christians go to church, right? But I can see people who are at church, maybe, and by that I mean people that we recognize as being, Christians. They're confessing, maybe serving in the church, that you would say, yeah, that's a Christian. But I see them struggling a lot of times. So, the ministry of Jesus was for the Jew and the Gentile. So you could say today it'd be for the Christian and the non-Christian. Because we've been Christians engrafted into God's becoming God's people. It didn't exclude the Jews, but just added us to them. But then you've still got the Gentile, the one without God. The people without God are non-Christians. And so we ought to have compassion and a love for both of them. So as we walk about, or walk around, going through our day, that's what verse 1 just grabbed me. That first part is Jesus is just walking around. He's just doing what he did as a man walking this earth, and he sees something. He realizes this situation, and I think if we'll begin to be sensitive to that, God will begin to use us in just small ways. You may not draw a crowd like Jesus. You may not, lay hands on and pray for people like Jesus did. But even in the smallest things, we can interject God's love, God's hope, God's help, God's wisdom into situations in people's lives. But don't set aside the praying for people, or the laying on of hands of people, and expectation there. Begin to set that expectation. I said this Tuesday night. One of the sayings whenever I was a youth pastor that we would use in, like, the people that helped us, or I'd even talk to parents about this. The teenagers will rise to your expectations. So what are you expecting out of them? Sometimes I hear parents setting the expectation for problems, for trouble, for rebellion, for not being irresponsible, being, don't set the expectation of, well, you're just going to be, you're just, and say something negative. Begin to set the expectation for something positive. Begin to say something different. Begin to say, oh, you're smart, you're responsible. Begin to say things. And if it's a stretch at first, maybe because they're not matching that, and don't just say you can do it, because that's like saying you're not doing it. Begin to hit the set that expectation so they can rise to it, and say, especially if they do something that's right. Find those smallest things, and I say that to even husbands and wives. Man, find those things that they do right, man, and just really make that a big deal, because it makes such a difference. But Jesus just finding ways to minister as he goes through his day, both to the Jew and the Gentile. But this man was a Jew, and they talked about that. But I want to get down to again verse 8. You remember we stopped here. No, verse. Let's go verse 6. It says, Then Jesus spit on the ground and made mud with the saliva. He spread the mud over the blind man's eyes, and he told him, Go wash yourself at the pool of Siloam. And Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. So he was changed, but he was changed as the result of his obedience. You know, I tie this in. I think there's times when we don't understand why healing doesn't happen, and it can't be this all the time, or it isn't this all the time in the examples where Jesus was ministering healing, or maybe the apostles, and even in the Old Testament prophets. God healed all the way through the Bible. It wasn't something that happened only in the 3.5 years of ministry of Jesus while he was on the earth. It was all the way through. It's a characteristic of God. But there was certain things asked or required at times. In this case, he said, go wash in a specific pool within the city. You know, it was a certain place. And he said, go wash there. And he didn't even indicate what to do. What he was going to receive. But he spread the mud on the blind man's eyes, and and told him, go wash. Now, I love what it says at the end of that verse. It's verse 7. It says, so the man went and washed and came back seeing. He was willing to be obedient to go to this specific place. Now, the mud could have been, it was awkward. It was embarrassing. Could have been all these things. And he could have let his pride say, well, I'm getting this off right now. Or I don't want to go all the way there. Or I don't have, made an excuse. I don't have anybody to take me. Probably somebody took him. But there's many reasons we could not obey. He could have not obeyed. But his receiving was this one way. How many times, I wonder, how many times in our lives do we miss God's power, his help, his plan, because we're disobedient? Do we delay an answer? Do we delay something? Because obedience, when we follow God in obedience, that the blessing comes. If you read Deuteronomy chapter 28, I love that. The first 14 verses talk about the blessing for the one who's obedient to follow the commands of God. If you'll follow my commandments, follow the things that they were given at that time to do, God gave a whole list. I'll bless you in the city. I'll bless you in the field. I'll bless you. So city and country. I'll bless you going in. I'll bless you coming out. I'll bless everything that you set your hand to. I'll bless your production ag. I'm gonna bless your herds and your crops and your fields. Well, that was their business. That was their livelihood. So to me, if you tie that into today, as we're obedient and we're following God, he's blessing the things we set our hands to, which would be, in many of your cases, not agriculture directly. Maybe a lot of you would be agriculture. But God's going to be at work in those things because we were willing and obedient to do what he says. Now, where the Old Testament, Deuteronomy is concerned, we're not following all the laws. We don't have to do that. But we need to follow the one, especially love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when you do that, then you do fulfill the 10 Commandments plus many others. But really where our focus in following and obeying are concerned is listening to what Jesus taught through these Gospels, and then learning who we are and how to apply it through the epistles, which is the rest of the New Testament, where these apostles are teaching how this is how we put this to work, or this is how this works in the church. This is how this works in a believer's life. And so, being willing and obedient. And I started off talking about where, Jesus was just, as he was going, he ministered. Well, as we're going, learning to be obedient is first of all in the very simple things that are written. The things you can read. And if you don't know very much Bible yet, you could start in the book of John and read one of these, and then you could read Ephesians, you could read Philippians and Colossians. They're shorter. You can read some of those, and of course eventually work all the way through. But getting some of those things in, and as you see it, don't just read it as something written thousands of years ago. Take it as God speaking to me, and to begin to apply those things. So anyway, being obedient, being willing. There's simple ways that we're obedient. In our finances, we're in our prayer time, in our care and love for one another, in being assembled with believers. I mean, we're assembled here today with believers, and many of you know one another, or you getting to know one another through the comments and people on Facebook. And so making those connections, just challenge you with that. What is God speaking to you through the written word, just as you read, or through a sermon from someone who teaches the Bible? Whenever we speak the word of God and it goes to you, do you reject it or do you receive it? When God says forgive, are you quick to obey? When he says trust, when he says to pray, when he says to give, when all those things, can we do those things? And so if you struggle, say, God, I want to do this. Help me. And you know what? He'll show up and he'll help. Isn't that an awesome thing? Well, listen, as you go out through your day today, be looking for opportunities and ways that you can minister to somebody else. Helping others is one of the best ways to be encouraged yourself. And so do that and walk in the blessing, and go get them for Jesus. Love y'all. Let's see who all's on here. Good morning, Mom. Morning, Scott Keller. Boyd Pete. Tim Heinrich, good morning. Good morning, Mark McCauley. Wendy, good morning. Boyd Pete, I think I said that. Jeff Washburn, good morning. Deb, good morning. Bobby, Jared Cook, good morning all. Good to have you. I think I got the rest of you up there at the top. Good crowd this morning. Way to be here and grow in the Lord. I just encourage you today, be led of the Lord and be a blessing to somebody. Isn't that awesome? Go have a great day. Love y'all.